All right, so in today's video, we are going to look at how do we use the product and the quotient rules to find the derivative of a function. So we will start with a function like this. F of x equals x squared sine of x. So first off, you need to be able to identify when it is that you're going to apply the product rule. And we're going to use it here because we have the product of two functions. Okay, so let's recall from our previous work that if I have the product of two functions, u times v, and I want the derivative of that, then that is going to be the derivative of the first function times the second plus the first function times the derivative of the second. Now, just as a little side note, because this is plus and this is times here, you don't have to put it in this order. In other words, you could have it like this: v prime u plus u prime v, or something like that. So it doesn't really matter which order you put them in, as long as you have the derivative of one times the other plus the derivative of the other times the one. All right, so in our case, our first function here is x squared, and our second function is sine of x. So what we want to do is we want to, if you look at this pattern over here, right here, this formula, we want to take the derivative of the first function. So the derivative of, I'm going to actually call it that. I'm going to say, let's let u equal x squared, and we're going to let v equal sine of x. Oops, sine of x. Okay, so that means that u prime is 2x and v prime is cosine of x. So if we use this formula here, we're going to do u prime, oops, sorry about that. We're going to do u prime, which is 2x times v sine of x plus u x squared times v prime cosine of x. And that will be the derivative. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a different function. I'm going to ask you to pause the video, and then I want you to try it and come back and we'll work it together. So let's look at instead this function here, g of x equal, let's try this one here, the natural log of x times tangent of x. All right, so pause the video, try that one. Okay, so we are looking for g prime of x, and I do have, if we look at this, I do have the product of two functions. So I'm going to take the derivative first, which will be 1 over x times the second. Okay, so notice it's just times the second. I don't do anything to the second function. Plus, now I take the derivative of the second, which is secant squared of x times the first. Now, you don't have to do this, although sometimes it might be helpful to write this as tan x over x plus secant squared of x times the natural log of x. And that would be the derivative there. Now, because quotients are related to products, we often do the quotient rule at basically the same time that we do the product rule. So let's look at an example from that. So let's suppose that we had this function h of x equal e to the x over x squared minus 2. and we wanted to find the derivative. Now let's recall that the derivative of, if I have u over v, and I want to find that derivative, that's going to be u prime v minus uv prime over v squared. A lot of times I'll tell students to think of it like this. It's the top derivative times the bottom minus the top times the bottom derivative all over the bottom squared. Now, unlike the product rule, this one, the order matters because this is subtraction. It matters that it's always the derivative of the top first times the bottom, then subtract the derivative of the bottom times the top. Okay, so here I would have h prime of x. So I'm going to do the derivative of the top, which happens to just be e to the x, times the bottom. Now, this is where students often make a mistake. You need to put that in parentheses because it's being multiplied by the entire denominator, minus the derivative of the bottom, which is 2x, times the top, all over the bottom squared. Now, as a general rule, there might be some things that you could simplify out of this. Sometimes that will be helpful, sometimes it won't. In this case, I don't think that there would be a lot that would really be helpful to us. So we can just leave it as is. All right, so why don't you try this one? Let's call it r of x equal to, we'll say cosine of x over let's see here, let's say 4 to the x. All right, so why don't you pause the video and give that one a shot. All right, so hopefully you were able to get that. Let's look at how that one would work out. So we would have r prime of x. So we want the derivative of the top, which is negative sine of x, times the bottom, minus the derivative of the bottom, which is the natural log of 4 times 4 to the x, times the top, all over the bottom squared. Now, in this case, you could factor out a 4 to the x. Notice that there's a 4 to the x in every term here, so we could factor that out, and, you know, it would simplify somewhat. So we would have, if I factor out the negative, I'd have sine of x plus the natural log of 4 times cosine of x all over 4 to the x. All right.